All right. Well, great to see you folks, and welcome to the School Psychology Review webinar that'll be focused on preparing and submitting manuscripts for the special topic featured session on school violence and school safety. And today, along with myself, we have distinguished colleagues and guest editors, Matthew Mayer, as well as Amanda Nickerson. Each of us will provide a brief introduction in just a moment. But also wanted to highlight that I know that Kirby Wyckoff and Ryan Farmer are out there helping us, our SPR social media team. And you can see the Twitter links, the Facebook links. If you're not currently engaged with the SPR community online, we certainly encourage you to be if you're active on social media. Lots of information and updates that we're providing consistently, including announcements such as this session, and as well as many other sessions that we'll be doing each month. So welcome, and those of you who have already completed the poll, we can already see that there's been over 40 who have completed it. So I'll go ahead and in that poll, and then I'll share the results so you can take a quick look there. Basically, you can see that we have about 40% students participating, about 20% faculty, about 31% practitioners, and then smaller amount, 7% of other. And then we're talking about welcoming manuscripts from scholars across diverse disciplines and that address a wide range of science that's related to school violence and school safety. So we asked about which of the topics you were most interested in, and we can see there's a fairly solid balance of interest of at least 50% of colleagues in most of the areas, perhaps just with the exception of the one area, informing understanding of how gun access relates to school and community violence. But each of the other 5 areas each had about 50% indicating interest. And then in terms of your current level of knowledge or expertise related to school violence and school safety, we can see that we've got about 36% indicating self-identifying as beginners. We got about 50% identifying as mid-level sort of knowledge, and then about 17% indicating that they have extensive knowledge in this area. And then finally, just to get a sense of who's been publishing what out there, we asked about how many articles, chapters, books have you published on the topic of school violence and school safety. And again, roughly 2/3 are zero. So lots of folks new to the topic, and we'll certainly be providing information and encouraging you to potentially submit your scholarship for review to School Psych Review. And then we've got, about 20% that have done 1 to 2, about 10%, 3 to 5. And we have a smaller group that's, up there 6 to 10 publications at 5%, as well as 10 plus publications, 5%. And then also have 5% with 20 plus. So it's quite a few publications. That's quite a lot of publications. So welcome everyone. And hopefully each of you are doing well, staying safe within the COVID-19 context. And we've got lots of great information to share with you today. I think now we've heard a lot of chimes, a lot of folks in, and if you do need to ask a question or share information, feel free to type in the chat. Again, Kirby and Ryan will help us out as Amanda and Matthew and I are sharing some information and talking through things. We'll also pause on occasion to find out what questions you have. And rest assured that we plan for our presentation of information to only take a portion of the time, and then we have an opportunity for each of you to be asking questions and get more information and make sure we're getting you what information you need as well. Okay, so with that, let me go ahead and continue on. And again, Kirby, if something comes up, feel free to just let me know, pop in there. We'll keep pressing forward. All right, so in terms of our focus on school violence and school safety, as I mentioned, colleagues who will be the guest editors are featured here today during our session. Thanks to each of you for being with us, joining us. And we'll just go ahead and pass it around and let Amanda, Matthew, myself give you a brief introduction, brief background about ourselves. You can see a host of books that we've featured here that we've each co-authored, lots of them together. But we'll start with Amanda to kick us off.
Okay, thanks, Shane, and welcome everyone. My name is Amanda Nickerson. I'm a professor of school psychology at the University at Buffalo, so over here in New York, but far from New York City. We're actually closer to the Canadian border for those who are familiar with the area. So my area, I also at the University at Buffalo, I direct a small research and outreach center called the Alberti Center for the Prevention of Bullying, Abuse, and School Violence. So my research, scholarship, and professional interests have surrounded topics of school crisis prevention and intervention, promoting wellness and positive school climate, and then, of course, preventing and intervening with bullying. So Shane's shown you some of the books that are featured here that I've had the honor of collaborating with Shane and Matthew and other colleagues on. So it's a real honor to be here and to be guest editing this special issue.
Thanks, Amanda. How about you, Matthew?
Hi, I'm Matthew Mayer. I'm on the faculty at Rutgers University in the Graduate School of Education. We're in New Brunswick, New Jersey. My background is in special education, but over the last 2 decades, I've spent a lot of time with colleagues in school psychology and several other allied fields, very interested in going beyond the traditional boundaries that some specializations held on to for a number of years. I've been involved in a number of collaborations with these folks and others, and we also together have been involved in advocacy work going back to 2006 with the school shootings, generating a national school shooting position statement again in 2012. These were endorsed by almost every major professional organization across the allied disciplines, and more recently with the call for action to end gun violence in the US in 2018 after the Parkland shooting. And we continue our work together with a broad interdisciplinary group.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew. And my name is Shane Jimerson, and I'm at the University of California, Santa Barbara. I'm a professor in the Department of Counseling, Clinical, and School Psychology. I focus particularly in the area of school psychology and also come from developmental psychology background. And so I very much embrace the types of things that Matthew's talking about in terms of the interdisciplinary opportunities and transdisciplinary opportunities here. And I know we have a lot of folks on representing different perspectives, different fields and such. Throughout my career, I've focused on an assortment of different topics, as Amanda was alluding to earlier, including school crisis prevention, promoting school safety, trying to reduce school violence, collaborating with colleagues on the Prepare school crisis prevention intervention curriculum and book and materials and trainings and such. And then also had the good fortune of collaborating with other colleagues addressing the topic of bullying and victimization and these sorts of things. So really, I consider myself focused on promoting the social, emotional, behavioral, mental health development of students at school. So again, I've had the good fortune of collaborating with Matthew and Amanda, as well as many others on lots of different projects. And I've continued to find it incredibly enriching and informative, and really delighted to be here with each of them today and each of you to share a little bit of information about the topic of school safety and school violence, and then also provide some information to each of you about the possibility of submitting manuscripts to the School Psych Review special topics section. I should also note that I'm currently the editor-elect of School Psych Review, and we are putting together a series of special topic sections that we've been beginning to announce. We'll be hosting these various SPR Zoom webinars on each of those topics to further inform and engage our SPR community and colleagues throughout the country and throughout the world. So welcome. All right, so the format is that we've got an agenda that we want to brief you on here. Let's see, so we're going to briefly present some information and share with you information about the context, the importance, the purpose. Then we'll also focus on the types of manuscripts that are being encouraged, the due dates, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we'll want to preserve time for questions and answers. And again, those of you that have a question that want to type it into the group chat, that's fine. Kirby will pick up on that, and we'll be pausing occasionally, but we'll also be able to have those for the end as well. And then also those of you out there that are actively engaged in social media, I know the last couple times some folks were taking screenshots and posting them and tweeting them and such. So we encourage you to do that as well throughout the time that we're together. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in, provide a little bit of information about the context related to school violence and school safety. All right, there's Matthew.
So in this slide, you see a quick snapshot of some levels of violence where middle schools are experiencing the violence to a greater degree. But let's consider this a takeoff point where we stop for a second and ask ourselves, what are we really talking about when we use these words violence and safety? And we get different answers from different people. For some, it's more aligned with the official statistics around violent crime and other forms of crime. For others, it's broader, encompassing something people sometimes call low-level aggression, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, theft at school, and other forms of violence. We want to encourage a broad range of views on this. Sometimes, and just by way of example, bullying gets defined in certain ways that perhaps don't recognize associated violent behaviors linked to what we think of as bullying. And that goes into the research as well. Dewey Cornell, Amanda, and others have talked about this from time to time.
Excellent. Thanks, Matthew. Oh, hold on. All right, let me click it to the next one. And seems to be a slight delay. Let's see, there we go. Okay, and I wanted to speak to this slide in terms of, so I thought it was delaying. Sorry about that. There seems to be a slight delay in getting back there. Okay. Patience. I clicked it too many times. There we go. And back. Okay. Okay. So related to this slide, helping to illustrate, for instance, this was 2015 or data that was published and featured in 2015 that looked at students who started high school in 2009 and revealing that as of 2012, there was a higher percentage of Black students compared to Hispanic, white, and Asian students that had ever been suspended or expelled. And this is important to give us a point to jump into the importance of considering diversity and cultural and contextual considerations in our research related to school violence and school safety. So for instance, just in terms of discipline disparities, when students who belong is referring to the topic where when students belong to specific demographic groups, whether that's by race or ethnicity or sex or disability status, that there are certain groups that are subjected to particular disciplinary actions disproportionately. So they're exposed at a greater rate than students who belong to other demographic groups, as illustrated in these data, for instance, where Black students, and in particular we find in the literature, Black males are more likely to be suspended or expelled from school than white and Asian males or other students. Now, discipline disparities also refer to differences in the type of disciplinary actions that are taken against a student, right? And so there's also research revealing that it's demonstrated that students who belong to specific demographic groups are more likely to face harsh, for instance, corporal punishment or exclusionary, such as out-of-school suspensions. They're more likely to experience those types of disciplines relative to students who belong to other demographic groups, even when committing similar offenses or exhibiting minor behaviors or some subjective behaviors like talking back or these sorts of things. So again, the point of us featuring this particular information is to give us a point to launch into the emphasis on the importance of considering diversity, considering social justice, considering the context, considering the ecological factors that also cultural, ecological, contextual factors that also influence the individual's development, as well as the manifestation of these various behaviors, as Matthew was talking about, the range of behaviors that would be occurring within the schools, within the communities and such. At the further extension of this, it starts to trickle into the school to prison pipeline literature and these sorts of things. But just wanted to highlight for each of you, hopefully you're including these considerations in your scholarship and your research. And certainly if you are, we welcome these types of submissions to the school psych review in general, and especially right now with this special topics section. But for each of the topics we're talking about, again, the door is always going to be open in terms of opportunity to submit high quality scholarship addressing these topics within school psych review. And I'll go ahead and just click once to then have it pass on to Amanda, I believe, for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
A brief, okay, there it is.
So clearly, a lot of times when the general public hears the term school violence, school shootings are probably what is at the forefront of people's minds. And certainly a lot of what we're doing in schools now has come about because of high-profile school shootings. But that's often at odds with the actual data that we have about that. So we're very interested in scholarship that looks broadly at crime and safety in schools. So you'll see on this slide, we have some statistics about safety plans that public schools have had in place as in the last 5 to 7 years. And the high percentage of schools that have a written safety plan in the event of a shooting, and then a slightly lower percent of those that have actually drilled students on the use of the plans. So, when we look at school violence and school safety, we are encouraging you all to look at it from a comprehensive transdisciplinary approach, both in terms of scholarship and also the work that we do in schools. We know that comprehensive school safety teams and school crisis teams are best when they're multidisciplinary, and we can have the input of folks from many different backgrounds and disciplines, and also looking from prevention, what we're doing long before violence happens, what we can do to be preventative, to various preparedness and protection and mitigation measures, all the way to response and recovery. So what does that look like after an event takes place? We've certainly been talking about this and preaching about it, if you will, for quite some time, with things like the Prepare School Crisis Prevention and Intervention curriculum. I think the context that we're all in right now probably makes it more clear than anything that we could have said how we really need teams that know about business continuity and planning, technology, communication, health and safety. So, we're really trying to look at school safety very broadly defined, both for this special issue and also just in the topic in general.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda. And just tap it once.
And I think it's just following on from that kind of broad viewpoint and conceptualization of school safety and school violence that we're really very focused as well on promoting positive youth development and considering how disorder and violence develop. Shane mentioned the important developmental psychology context, ecological and social justice considerations. These things aren't always considered by educational and political leaders. So again, we're very much encouraging a balance of physical and psychological safety. There has been certainly a lot of focus, legislation, public opinion about hardening schools and having more security and get tough sort of measures, even in the absence of empirical support. And even though we have some empirical support, that does not justify things like zero tolerance and things like that. But we welcome healthy empirical debate as well about different topics related to this, but we did want to focus on that balance of the physical and psychological safety, that we really can't have one without the other. So we welcome work that is in that spirit and shows and reflects that.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda. All right. Should go. A moment of reflection. So let's see, if I launch the poll, we can take a moment to, oh, there it is. We can take a moment to see how things are going. And if you have any questions that you wanted to ask, now's a great time to type in the chat box. Moment to breathe. Folks are entering lots of good information there. Okay. So far, in terms of just about right, it represents 85%. So I think we're on the right track. Completely clear, 89%. And so far, so good, 80%. And 20% are hanging in there. So keep, okay, we'll try to get those other two as well, engaged as well. All right, perfect. So yeah, 88% completely clear, Amanda and Matthew, and 84% just right. All right, thanks for the feedback. Thanks for the input there. And I don't need to share it. We'll carry on. All right. Okay, so let's pop over to the needs. Matthew, if you could speak to this in terms of the purpose of the special topic focus.
Okay. We're interested in leveraging transdisciplinary research. I'll also refer to the other slide. You know, sometimes we hear these terms, cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary. Some people use them interchangeably, but often we can think of that cross-discipline areas where I'm tapping into some other areas of knowledge from allied disciplines, but where interdisciplinary may suggest a bit more collaboration from researchers across the disciplines. But when we start talking transdisciplinary, and that's something we're hoping to encourage, we're thinking about a synthesis of frameworks at a higher level, transcending sort of the silos and breaking new ground. One way to think about this, and part of this can relate to the history of research, is if you go back on authoritative parenting and then look at the work of Dewey Cornell and others on authoritative schooling, linking to school climate, we're bridging disciplines. If you want to go way back and think about the Seattle social development model and some of the early research there, but then take a look at some economic theory and at the same time critical race theory, you can open new dimensions into what we might call opportunity systems or structures that are very much linked to school safety issues, particularly affecting disenfranchised youth. But we want to encourage submissions from many allied disciplines who have a stake in school safety issues, where we're using empirical research to better answer questions and better understand the many connections.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew. I know some of the content you were starting to mention there was also overlapping a bit with that next slide, so I put it up just momentarily so folks could also take a little bit of that in, but you're welcome. I think it'll advance in a moment.
I think we're right on where we're supposed to be. I think I was going to talk about the purpose a little bit.
Okay.
Yep.
but I think it might be there. Is it this one? Oh yeah, there we go. There we go.
I think the one Matthew was talking about was 2 back.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, I was bridging there.
Yeah. No, so now I still think we have, yeah, back 1 more.
I got you, Amanda. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna stay.
There we go. Yeah, so this slide was up for you, but Matthew was talking about some more of this one was the one he was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now the purpose of this special topic, as I think we've really said, is we really want to look at multiple dimensions of school safety research. We want to do that by unpacking empirically based answers to key research questions. And I think I'd add to that key research and practice questions. There's conversations all over about how do we make schools safe? What does school safety mean? How do we promote wellness and safety? So we really want to be looking at that too. And also we want many stakeholders to be able to link this work to their areas of school safety concerns. And I think now would actually be a great time, if I may, to just answer a question that was posed about does any of this work include community involvement? And the excellent point was made that especially in urban environments, school safety is tied to more than just the school buildings. So I appreciate Jasmine Stiles for bringing that up and just saying that absolutely we are interested in how these different contexts intersect, how it is that families, community agencies, community responders may be working together, and some of the tensions and problems that may arise from that as well. We can't separate school safety from the context of the neighborhood and the other contexts and environments in which schools, families, and students, schools, and families operate. So thanks for that question.
Amanda, would now be an okay time for a few other questions? Let me know when, because I've gotten some private questions come in from folks that would love some feedback. So whenever the time is right, you let me know.
I'm fine to go whenever. Is that okay with you, Shane and Matthew?
Sure.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that someone had sent privately was around the impact of school police on students' perception of safety. So given the recent police shootings involving people of color, what are your thoughts on the discussion of the perceptions of students of color and school police as it relates to this topic?
And I guess just to clarify, is the question, are we interested in that kind of work for this special issue?
I think both. Are you interested in it, and maybe just general thoughts on that as it relates to the topic broadly?
Yeah. There's certainly been some excellent scholarship in the last few years that's looking carefully at what is the impact of the presence of police, the actions of police. Do they make students feel more safe, less safe? And the research that I'm mostly familiar with has been showing that if we just had to generalize that students appear to feel less safe, the more kind of security and measures, police officers and such that are in place, and that there also seems to be a bit of an uptake or correlation in more arrests and things like that when there are police in the building. Some folks have done some more recent nuanced work as well that has really looked at the contact that students have had with these law enforcement and resource officers. And I think they found a bit more nuanced findings, and that there's actually some elevated feelings of safety depending on their relationship as well. So I think it's an area that of great interest, and I would say that we would welcome work that would be looking at that, particularly empirically, and as the question arose, particularly related to racial, cultural issues as well.
And I just wanted to jump in and suggest there's also, I think, fertile ground for some structural equation modeling work relative to that kind of data coupled with other indicators from schools in terms of disciplinary referrals, suspensions, and so forth.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, Kirby. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Matthew. And I will try to click once and be able to go to the next slide for you, Amanda. Oh, Matthew. It's Matthew, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Part of the logos are cut off on my screen. That's why I was having some difficulty before. So we really are interested in a wide range of coverage here. And we use these terms, school violence and school safety. And in one sense, we could be talking about a balance of school safety promotion, school violence prevention. Some people mapping and unpacking these things in different ways, depending on their conceptual frameworks. But we know there are a lot of issues in terms of diversity that are linked to school safety, in terms of, and again, I use the term opportunity structures, but equal access and opportunities that can vary considerably as a function of socioeconomic status and race, ethnicity. We're interested in systems of discipline, both what we might think of as aspects of self-regulation and self-discipline, some of it from an SEL perspective, some from other more behaviorist perspectives, as well as positive behavioral supports, and some newer things, CI3T and others, that are really recognizing a need to leverage aspects of PBS and SEL type approaches. There's been a growing interest in that in the last 10 years, and we're seeing more models now. Issues of gun access, this often gets both oversimplified and conflated because of the media, where we need to better understand issues of school and community violence and the relationships and roles that guns play as well. Likewise, when we think about the growing interest in threat assessment, the advances we've made in ways to measure school climate and link that to aspects of school management, just the idea that now many systems are using these dashboards for helping them in decision making, where these things 20 years ago didn't really exist very much. We're seeing growing interest in restorative justice. It's not a slam dunk in terms of strong evidence base, but we're seeing promising research in that area, and that would be most welcome, and other approaches as well.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, so opportunity for me to share a bit of information about the types of manuscripts that are encouraged. Clearly, there's opportunities to submit various assorted types. There's a strong emphasis that we're seeking to have empirical, quantitative, and/or qualitative papers, including also other types such as meta-analytic analyses. Systematic review papers are also welcome for submission. But again, hopefully those of you that do have data, that do have articles that you've been working on maybe for some time, or data that you've just recently sort of finished with collection, maybe this special topics section would be a place that you could feature that good work. But certainly, reach out to us. We encourage you to submit. We'll be reviewing each of the submissions when they come in order to identify whether it seems like it may be a good fit with the journal or not prior to sending them out for peer review. So the good aspect of that, the good news is that you'll be able to get information back promptly if it's not a good fit. But then if it is a good fit, we'll also put it through the process to provide you with constructive, high quality, and timely reviews. And if it's suitable for publication, of course, as you know, based on the recommendations of the reviewers, based upon the review of the action editors, that then will be sending decision correspondence and such to reflect this peer review process, and some of those manuscripts being revised, resubmitted. Ultimately, we're looking at intending to feature special topics section early in 2020, that these articles, these papers that are submitted and favorably reviewed would be published early in 2020 to bring further emphasis to this good work. Okay, yep, and I see one question that's coming up, which I think is our next slide. So thanks for that prompt, Jenny. So in terms of when manuscripts are due, to be featured within the special topics section, we are requesting submissions between June 1st and June 15th. These will be among the first manuscripts that the incoming school psych review leadership team is responsible for managing and such. And it's important to note that we're going to be doing this between June 1st, June 15th. It could be that yours is ready on June 16th, June 17th. We still encourage you to submit, obviously. And frankly, even if you have a manuscript that's ready in September or December, even though it might not be able to be slotted within the special topics section on school violence and school safety, if you have relevant research, the door is always open to submitting, high quality manuscripts to school psych review. And you can do that right there online. You can see that it's the Taylor and Francis. Taylor and Francis uses this U before all of their journal titles. So then it's just the U, SPR. And when you click on that, you'll find, for those of you who haven't visited the School Psych Review Taylor and Francis website yet, you'll find a portal that looks something like this. And in here, you can click to submit an article, for instance. You can subscribe to get the alerts and such, which we encourage each of you to do if you want to stay abreast, not just of the current articles that are published in School Psych Review, but also those that are put online first. Those are also prompted out to subscribers of the School Psych, the Taylor and Francis School Psych Review site as well. But this is where you would go to submit your manuscripts. It's also important that this particular site also includes the guidelines for authors. I'm not able to scroll down here because this is just a screenshot, but if you just went down here a couple more, you would see that there's you can click on guidelines for authors. In general, the page limit is 35 pages. Okay, so that's something to take in consideration. The abstract length, I believe, for School Psych Review is at 150 words. In addition, we are adding an impact statement where you can provide 1, 2, or 3 sentences that clearly articulate the contributions of your paper for advancing science, practice, and/or policy, right? So these are a few of the little details that if you are thinking about submitting paper to School Psychology Review, it's best to check out those author guidelines, just as there's some small variation across some of the journals regarding page limits, for instance, and/or word length, and/or how many words to have in abstracts and that sort of thing. So those are the key details about submitting, and I think that gives the information that that Jenny had asked about in terms of the due date. And again, to highlight that now with this partnership with Taylor and Francis, there'll be opportunities for wide dissemination beyond what NASP was able to do as it was previously published all within NASP. So we're at that point where we've provided lots of the information that we wanted to share, but as promised, we want to make sure there's time for questions and another opportunity to remind you to be involved and get involved with the SPR community on social media. I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll as we're addressing questions here at the end, and folks can share in there what you learn about and that sort of thing from today, if it was helpful, whether or not you might submit. Okay, so what questions do we have? Kirby, are there any that are in the queue that you have, or we can open it up for people to speak?
There have been a couple questions just about topics that might be of interest to the special issue. So one person wondering, actually a few people wondering about the interest in sort of teachers' perspectives and how teachers fit into this sort of bigger construct of school safety and school violence. So that was one. And then a lot of questions around, how can we continue this conversation from the special issue and from this webinar to, more of the NASP community and really sort of wanting to be involved at that level.
Excellent. I'll let Amanda and Matthew speak to some of the first portions of the questions, or all portions of the questions. So I'll open it up to Amanda. It looks like you're muted, Amanda, or Matthew's not.
Well, I think there's a lot to explore in terms of the intersection of teachers' beliefs and attitudes, which certainly affects their behaviors when we think about the catalysts for student-teacher interaction, systems of discipline, academic success, and trajectories of success or relative failure, depending on how things are going. So I think there are many opportunities for research there. Amanda?
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. And I'm not sure that this was the particularly the question, but there is also increasing interest in teachers' experiences themselves of violence and victimization, and that being an important and somewhat neglected empirical concept that some of our colleagues, Dorothy Espelage and Linda Reddy and others, Chun-Yan Yang, have started to bring to the forefront that we'd also like to highlight.
Yeah.
And in terms of, I've been following some of the chat, Kirby, as you were mentioning too, about, I'm so excited that there's interest in kind of taking these topics and interest to other aspects of school psychology readership. Someone brought up bringing this to the NASP communities, I think in relation to the role of SROs and really wanting to look at strong models of law enforcement and school partnerships. And, I think that we'd really encourage that. And I know that Shane and his incoming editorial team is already doing a lot to try to bring this kind of scholarship into the conversations in ways that are accessible for the field. So I don't know if she wants to comment more on that.
Oh, go ahead, Matthew. You got another aspect?
I was just going to say that in addition, I think there's a lot of fertile ground in terms of school community partnerships and collaborative management systems. We've seen work around the country. I'm just thinking of one that popped in my head, Say Yes to Education, but others where they have systems where they follow kids' trajectory towards successfully graduating school. And as kids experience different issues academically and in the social emotional behavioral arenas, there are flags that come up that alert the partners who, again, this spans the school and the community, to look for ways to support success. So this is another broad area that's very worthy of research.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Matthew and Amanda are both saying about these various topics, whether it's teachers or communities or different dimensions here, SROs and such. Really what this is all about from my perspective is really the opportunity to pursue the next frontier and really understand how to advance our knowledge, advance our science, advance our practice, inform and advance our policies related. And as Amanda was describing, that's really what we aim to do here with School Psych Review, is to be able to open up further conversations, further community engagement, have those implications, having those impact statements, featuring this information in social media across multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary colleagues, engaging with policy makers, legislative folks, our educational colleagues, our peers throughout many of the different disciplines, and also getting this information into the communique, for instance. That's another venue. Just really try to help feature the science and the scholarship and these articles that are being published in School Psych Review across all the various avenues and venues, and not just within school psychology, but certainly within school psychology, but also, as we've highlighted throughout the information we've shared today, cutting across other disciplines and engaging our allied disciplines and colleagues in this scholarship and in the practice and in generating policies and strategies that are going to help facilitate school safety and help reduce violence within the school context. So yeah, each of those pieces, I just wanted to reiterate what Amanda and Matthew are saying, that that's really what we're all about. And that's where featuring this as a special topics section in School Psych Review really ought to help us. It's already hopefully helping us start to bring further attention to it. But then as the papers are published, being able to disseminate those, you'll be able to see those types of things featured. New strategies, such as even having authors have the opportunity to do brief videos that can be featured online, doing brief webinars, maybe even coming together. Wouldn't it be great to see Matthew and Amanda and some of the authors of manuscripts that are published do another SPR featured session like in mid 2020, and then we could actually talk about the take-home messages and things that were learned from the special topics section, right? So really trying to engage and provide that information, record that, provide it as a webinar for others, that sort of thing. Yeah. Other questions that came up that we still have a few minutes before we are official running out of, until we're out of time. Any other questions that came up that either of you see?
I saw that Ben Fisher asked, kind of related to what we've been talking about, how important it will be to include implications for school psychologists in particular.
That's a great question. Yeah, so certainly we want to understand the implications for science. We want to understand the implications for practice. We want to understand the implications for policy. And certainly if there's clear information and implications for school psychologists in the papers that you're submitting or preparing, certainly we welcome that. But we also recognize that there might be clear implications for other disciplines and other professionals and such. And so I appreciate sort of the sensitivity and awareness of thinking about the journal as School Psych Review. And then, you know, certainly we welcome in every manuscript, we would hope that the authors are clearly articulating any implications specifically to advance the science, the practice, and or the policy related to school psychology, but also beyond that, because we want to really recognize what Matthew's been describing and emphasizing about the sort of transdisciplinary nature of our work with children in the schools and in our communities, and sort of intersectionality and what it is that what we need to know. So certainly encourage folks to provide, you know, a few sentences, a few paragraphs within the context of the discussion as was asked about related to school psychology when possible, when reasonable, but also not just limited to that, really thinking broader than that and really welcoming those other allied disciplines and colleagues to contribute and share that information and insights. Yeah.
Shane, can I piggyback on that?
Absolutely.
I also want to encourage some risk taking. And by that, I mean, maybe you've been working with a data set and studying an issue, but perhaps this issue could be further enhanced through the eyes of a colleague from another discipline who has an interest in this, but with whom you have not collaborated in the past, but who might perhaps be interested. And I'm encouraging people to explore these kinds of new partnerships, again, in the spirit of transdisciplinary approaches.
That's excellent. Excellent, Matthew.
Can I share a question that's in the chat box that Matthew maybe in part is connected to what you just said there? I've had a few people ask, how can we gain and center the voices of marginalized people and communities in research and applied practice? How maybe in particular does this special issue seek to address that?
Yeah. And I think the key piece is we are strongly encouraging submissions from scholars who are doing this important work, that we are systematically engaged in outreach with our interdisciplinary colleagues. So this is, again, beyond just school psychology, but recognizing who's ever out there doing that great scholarship, we want to reach them, we want to encourage them to submit, and we want to take a close look at every single submission and manuscript in order to identify those that are going to be advancing our knowledge, our practice, and or informing policy and such. And so I think that's part of it, is that recognizing that there's an open door here for everyone to contribute. That, if I'm thinking, when you first asked the question, Kirby, it got me thinking about methodology. And I think in terms of, like Matthew saying, there's some very large data sets that some of you have access to that do actually include some of these variables that perhaps no one on the research team has looked at, or perhaps they haven't looked at it in the way that you can think about looking at it. And so we're encouraging folks to do this as well in terms of thinking about methodologies. Also, hopefully some of you have been engaged in participatory action research out there, and you've got high quality scholarship that's you're able to write up and submit as a paper to help inform our understanding. So those are a few of the thoughts that come immediately to mind. One is opening the door for all, and not just opening the door, but inviting everyone in, and then being able to look at this and talk about it and reflect on it. And again, the important part here, to be clear, is that you can submit this work anytime. Hopefully between June 1st and June 15th, folks who want to have their articles reviewed for this special topic section are able to submit. But if it's July 15th or August 27th, you can still submit the same types of manuscripts and papers into the school psych review system. We want to open that door. So it's not just a time-limited invitation, it's an open door with an extended invitation, at least for the next 5 years while I'm the editor. Yeah, any other questions there that came up that anybody wants to get Amanda or Matthew's thoughts on? Okay. All right. Well, it's been really great to have both Matthew and Amanda here with us today. Thank you so much for embracing the opportunity to collaborate on this webinar. We're really looking forward to seeing the special topic papers that are going to be featured. I will also say that, yeah, to the degree that this is a super popular topic and there's so many high quality manuscripts, it could end up that you'll see papers on this topic for an extended period, right? So again, given the context of the importance of the topic that we're talking about and giving the enthusiasm, I will report related to the poll, just in closing, that folks found it, more than half found it to be very informative. About half said a little helpful, and then there are just a couple that it was not what you were hoping for, might have already checked out. But also in terms of getting information about each of the areas, it was clear that 3/4 got information about the context, importance, the purpose, the type of manuscripts, the due dates, all of that. And then finally, how likely are you to submit a paper for review to the special topics section? Very likely was about 25%, and then about 40% said maybe. So that's great. Maybe we'll be seeing some of your manuscripts, and feel free to be in touch, reach out via email. It's hopefully this is an opportunity for you to put a face with a name. Probably many of you have seen the work that Matthew Mayer's published and the work that Amanda Nickerson's published, but maybe you hadn't had a chance to have a conversation with them. So today you had a brief opportunity to hear their voice, to talk to them a little bit, open invitation to follow up, ask questions, and further engage, right? And again, related to this, we've got the due date being June 1st through June 15th. We'll continue to put information out in postings to remind you, to highlight this. We encourage submissions to School Psych Review on this topic at any time, also on other areas as well, so it's not limited to this. And then be active, join us on social media. You can see the Twitter is at School Psych Rev there, and at Facebook is the School Psych Review. You can see that, and if you engage with us, we'll continue to provide you with more information, more opportunities for further engagement and that sort of thing. And again, a shout out, special appreciation, Kirby Wyckoff, Jamie Flowers, as well as Ryan Farmer have all been instrumental in facilitating the SPR social media infrastructure, as well as helping out here again today and at each of the webinars. So thank you to each of them as well. So. All right. Well, thank you. Take care. And we look forward to further communications. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, folks.
Thank you. All right. And I can stop that record. Stop that record. Stop recording. Okay.